The first thing I'm going to talk about is the transport assessment that we've had commissioned. We're then going to talk about the station itself, obviously close to my heart. Look at the statistics that we've got, and we carried out a survey ourselves. And lastly, I've got some drainage things to talk about, which is one of the major challenges on this development, if it were to go ahead.
Can we shut the door, because they're singing very nicely.
So first is the transport assessment that we've commissioned to have carried out. We're using a very reputable firm called Yes Engineering, and they're expected to complete their assessment and report by the end of the month. So we've agreed a brief with them as part of the committee, and I'll run through each of these items in some detail. So the first thing they're going to do is investigate the surrounding area and collect information on the existing highway network. So all of the challenges that we all currently know about in and around Heathrow, around the station development, all the way up Waterloo Lane and into Kemsing itself and into Seal. I won't go through them all in detail, but you're well aware, obviously, as a group, that this is not an area with any real facilities for the public. So there are no cycle paths, there are no pavements, there are no street lights. So it isn't set up well for a new development to come into the area and then have any sort of infrastructure coming away from it. The next thing we're looking at is the traffic management itself in terms of vehicles. So there are a lot of areas of pinch points, blind bends, narrow corners, chicanes, tight spaces, particularly as you come into Heathrow and also as you go up Waterloo Lane back towards Seal. So we're the investigation will have a series of photographs for each of these points and highlighting the concerns of each element as you go along the journeys in and around the proposed development. We're then going to look at the development proposals themselves, particularly what the St.Clare's vision dictates and what they've put in their travel plans, and look at each of their arguments and look where we can provide counter-arguments as to the negative approaches for some of the proposals that they've put forward. We're also going to look at that in conjunction with the Sevenoaks local plan and use any arguments within the local plan to help our arguments against the development itself. So we're also going to look at the development site itself and what those pedestrian and cycle needs would be, and how realistic it would be to put those cycle paths and pedestrian routes in from the development into Heathrow and back to Kemsing. Public transport accessibility we're going to have a look at. Obviously at the moment there are no bus networks. Kemsing Station comes into the middle of nowhere effectively, and there is no means of getting to another source of public transport from there unless you're willing to walk a decent way. And we're going to assess the current information that exists in terms of the traffic surveys, the data that's available from Sevenoaks District Council and also from the road authorities to assess the current traffic information available on Waterloo Lane and what impact this new development will be and the additional road usage that would happen as a result, both during the construction stage and through the ongoing development if it were to take place. And lastly, we're looking at the visibility splays. So when you're introducing a new development along Waterloo Lane, which is a 60-mile-an-hour road, how large the bellmouth would need to be in order to allow vehicles to safely enter and exit the new development site, with the traffic being able to get up to that speed on those small roads. Going to look at the existing state of Waterloo Lane, the state of the tarmac, the state of the road itself, and its ability to take the additional traffic that the survey will dictate in terms of number of vehicles. And we're going to assess the problem junctions that we all know about already, and the impact of all of the additional traffic that would happen as a result, and the further risk of accident, incident, and build-up of traffic at each of those key junctions. So, for example, we're all aware of the challenges of attempting to get on and off Waterloo Lane and the A25. We're going to look at Charlesbridge Lane and Church Street intersection, which is already a challenge. and into West End and Noah's Ark. And again, this is the type of information that could possibly be used if you are wanting to put forward a letter of objection for the other developments as well as the St. Clare's. Yeah, Pilgrim's Way, sorry, I should have mentioned it is on there as well. That is one of the other roads we're looking at, yes.
Just one point with regard to the train network too. I think it's important to note that Kemsing Station doesn't connect with Sevenoaks, our nearest town, either. It's a 35-minute train journey between Kemsing and Sevenoaks, which requires a change at Oxford Station as well. So it doesn't provide any of those local community benefits either.
I've got the train sections up next. You're stealing my thunder again. So after drainage comes trains. So drainage next. So there's three key challenges with regards to drainage. Firstly, a foul connection. Secondly, the surface water or storm connection. And lastly, the ongoing challenges of flooding at the bottom of Honeypot Lane and Watery Lane. So, as I myself know, there are no foul connections in the area of the proposed development. We have a small mini treatment works on our house, and the Chaucer Business Park has their own, obviously slightly larger foul treatment works, but there is no foul connections anywhere in the area. And if they didn't want to put in their own very large treatment works, this development would need to run well over 1 kilometre of drainage, large-scale drainage into Noah's Ark in order to pick up a foul connection. Next. So next challenge is stormwater or surface water runoff. So this is capturing rainwater effectively. The proposed development identifies some large pond areas, which I think they would probably argue is a way of capturing rainwater and allowing it to slowly soak away into the ground. But as most people know, that development there, the current business park that's there has got a large pond in the middle, and it's a very, very impermeable area of land. It's very clayey ground, doesn't work well for soakaways. And development of this size would create a huge amount of additional surface water runoff and a huge amount of additional stormwater. And the existing network of ditches, effectively with some drainage, would be impossible for that to deal with the increased capacity. And in addition to that, they would effectively have to dig huge ponds, much bigger than what they've shown, or have a very, very large set of attenuation tanks to deal with the rainwater runoff. So, a near impossible challenge, in my opinion, for that development. One of the challenges, which I think the St. Clare development is trying to spin into a positive in some fashion, is that the additional surface water runoff is only going to increase the ongoing challenges of stormwater and flooding build-up at Watery Lane and Honeypot Lane Junction. Always seems to be prestige cars that get stuck here. I think it was a Mercedes most recently, but read into that what you will. There isn't much that could be done here. I think St. Clare's are proposing somehow being able to resolve this problem. I think there's some more slides as you go through then. That's a slightly further picture with the road closed. Yeah, in order to do anything productive there, it would involve digging some large-scale drainage underneath the railway line as it comes over Watery Lane, and that in itself is a huge challenge involving the rail bodies, the water bodies, Highways England, Sevenoaks District Council, and it would cost an absolute fortune. So I can't see that working from a viability perspective and being something that St. Clare's would be able to push forward with. Onto the trains. So I've started this section with a quick summary of excerpts from the St.Clare's vision. So I'm going to read them out in case people can't read them particularly well at the back. So starting at the bottom, this development one of the major selling points appears to be the benefits of building around a station, both in terms of improving station facilities and what an excellent facility that is to the people that will be living next to it. So the statement says, with the challenges of increasing housing numbers in the area, developing land around the public transport hub of Kemsing Station is a practical solution. And two of the key targets that she's put in the vision, one is making Kemsing a transport hub. So extra parking, station improvements, links across the district makes Kemsing Station work better for everyone. And station access, a safe network of footpaths and cycle paths connect the site and station to neighbouring communities and their facilities. 5-minute cycle, 10 to 15-minute walk. So bear that in mind. I'll go through the information that we've got on the station and the surrounding area and we'll return to those statements at the end. So the first thing we did as a team is look at the existing information that's available. Went to the Office Road and Rail website, so that's the national body for road and rail, and they conduct survey information every year. So the table that hopefully you can all read on the side there is the same as what's shown graphically. The first thing to point out is this data, these numbers here over the last 5 years, are the numbers of entries and exits. So, for example, Borough Green and Ruton, 2013, 411,000 entries and exits. So that's the equivalent of 205,000 return journeys. So if we compare Kemsing over the last 5 years to our closest neighbours in Borough Green and Otford, Kemsing typically has just over 25,000 entries and exits, so 12,500 return journeys a year. And Borough Green and Ruton and Otford are about 17 times bigger than that, just over 400,000 typically, 426, 431 last year. So Kemsing's 17 times smaller than Otford and Borough Green. You can then compare that to Sevenoaks at 4,000 return journeys a year. 4 million, entries and exits, and 2 million return journeys a year, and that's about 164 times larger than Kemsing. So you get an idea of the scale of Kemsing relative to the stations around it. 25,000 entries and exits, when you scale that down to a daily number of people using the station, equates to about 45 return journeys a day. So there's your transport hub, 45 return journeys a day. In fact, Kemsing rates as the 2,176th largest station in the UK out of 2,563. So very small. In fact, it's the 7th smallest station in Kent. So the scale of the station you can really see. It's also important to note that Kemsing has remained completely static over the last 5 years. So with the increasing population in the area, there's no more people using the station. And as you can tell by the graph on the left-hand side for both Otford and Borough Green, they have increased steadily over the last 5 years, whereas Kemsing has stayed the same. So we thought we would look to corroborate this data by doing our own survey, which we carried out as a team last Monday and Tuesday. So remember, we're looking to try and see if we're in the 40 to 45 return journeys a day territory or not. So you probably can't see that particularly well from the back. We've got London bound and eastbound here, and just there at the top right of the first graph, you can see the commuters going into town, which on average over the 2 days is about 20 people. So there's 20 commuters going from Kemsing into Victoria, and these are the people returning the same day. So you can see just here at the bottom is those same 20 people returning. So yeah, it was an interesting couple of days. There was some low points, people going out in almost the middle of the night, and there being no one getting off the trains or getting on the trains. And there was great excitement on the 7:10 on Monday when we hit double figures, 10 people getting on the trains. So at the bottom there you get the totals, and we didn't quite hit the dizzy heights of 40 return journeys. We only got as high as the mid-30s. So, but it does give you an idea of the statistics from the Office of Road and Rail appear to be correct and corroborated by the work that we've done over the course of the last week. If you look at the number of people that would potentially use the railway from the proposed development, would equate to around 450 working adults at that from the 300 houses. Using the Sevenoaks district data, around 11% of people who work commute via train, so that equates to around 50 people. And of those 50 people, I guess 10, 15, maybe at most 20 would decide to use the existing rail system at Kemsing to go into Victoria or commute out towards Ashford. So you can tell the scale of the development proposed is going to have very little impact on the number of people that will use the station, and therefore it's highly unlikely that the rail authorities, Network Rail and South Eastern, would be interested in any sort of enhancements to the current facilities, both in terms of the physical facilities at the site and any potential additional services that they may wish to put on. This data also shows that there isn't any real need for any additional car parking facilities. So again, one of the St.Clere recommendations or sweeteners, as you were, is to put some additional car parking in place in the field on the other side of Honeypot Lane. The data shows there is no requirement for additional parking, and one would assume if you were to buy a house in the station development, you wouldn't then be driving your car through a potential flood at the bottom of Watery Lane, and only to park the same distance away from the station that you were 2 minutes ago. So there doesn't really appear the need for or any real sense behind the car parking that she's recommended.
John, can I just mention that last year I was on a project up in Victoria, and the first train out, the only companion I had was a tawny owl sitting on a fence post, and as he swiveled his head to look at me very sympathetically, because there's no one else there, I said, yeah, I know I'm nuts. I have no problem parking because there's no one other there at all.
Very true.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So, if we just summarise some of the things I've talked about already, is Kemsing Station a transport hub? And we'll go through some of the things I haven't touched on yet, which challenges to Kemsing Station becoming a transport hub. So, first thing, short platforms. Those of you who've caught the train, you're obviously advised to be in the front 6 carriages because the platforms are too short at Kemsing for the longer trains. If they were to extend those platforms, again, it would be at huge cost to the rail authorities that would need to be funded by a developer if they were using that as a sales tool. There is no disabled access at Kemsing Station. At the moment, you have to climb a set of steps at either end, at both sides of the station to get onto the platform. So if you were to make this a disabled access site, you would need to put ramps on both sides or small lifts on both sides. and then a further set of lifts to get you over the platform should you wish to change, or at the end of the day when you're crossing back to the point at where you started. So you're looking at most likely 4 lifts to be put into this station, and it would probably also dictate that the station would then require to be a manned facility, and then you would need the facilities to enable it to be manned, and therefore the viability of that looks unlikely. Car parking facilities are limited. There's no system in place for being able to buy tickets, etc., if they were to scale the project up. So it's unlikely that that would be a real benefit at all, as we talked about before. As everyone knows, only the stopper trains stop at Kemsing, so typically they're 1 train an hour. Occasionally you get a couple more when the trains are catching up with themselves and there's a separate train running through. But yeah, typically 1 train an hour, not great for commuters, and hence one of the reasons why there are only 20 people who use the system to go into Victoria. To my benefit, there are no trains on a Sunday, so everything flies through. As I mentioned before, it is an unmanned station, and if the station was to become of more use by somehow having an increased capacity through the development, there's a lot of facilities that would need to be put into place to change it to a manned station. And as you mentioned before, there are no links to any other train systems, there are no links to a bus system. It's difficult to walk anywhere. It's a long walk through the dark with no pavement back to Noah's Ark or back up into Heathrow. So in terms of a transport hub, linking to other transport options, it's not performing particularly well. And lastly, as mentioned before, there are no pavement, cycle paths or street lights on any of these roads, so not really a station that you would actively be encouraging people to travel to and then work their way back to their homes. And that's me done, thank you.